1, 2,
Standing
go.
by. You know it.
Here we go.
Hey, everybody, you're listening to and possibly watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz,
I'm Steve Morey.
I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
and we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in. Steve, what did you title this episode? Super Bears and Super Bowls?
Super Bears and Super Bowls. Yep, that works.
Okay.
I like the twang that he threw in there.
Super Bears and Super
Bowls.
Bowls.
And bowls.
I don't know. That's just my football sports announcer voice.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Gotcha.
about it.
All right. But we are on the Super Bowl Eve. Remember? Yeah.
Eve, yeah.
Yeah. Eve. And I guess there's at least two of us that are knowledgeable enough to make predictions.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, Caleb?
I trying to decide if I want to go with my brain or my heart. I'm gonna go Eagles over Chiefs 30-24.
Wow. I am going Chiefs over Eagles 30-24.
Okay.
Interesting.
I think they're very lucky. I think this is one of the rare times where you hit the Super Bowl and there's no big injury,
Right.
For the teams. There's really no big figure that's, and there's things going for both teams. I mean, Saquon Barkley, God almighty.
It's unreal.
It's unreal. But for me, it comes down to the coaching.
Yep.
And I do think Andy Reid is a better in-game coach than Sirianni. And with a game like this, I think that matters.
Yeah.
So that's where I came down with. I think it's going to be a close game. I don't think they're going to be. I don't think the point spread is going to be more than 10. But yeah, I'm just the reverse of you.
I think Love and Saquon are hungry.
Yeah.
I think they have a tie. I like Philly's defense. I think that they have a few. I think Philly has the defense that they can react to Andy Reid's bag of tricks that he has, and he has a trick for every 5 minutes. I mean, so
Yeah.
But I do think that they are smart. I think they can react to that. I think the Eagles, especially their secondary, on defense, I think those are they're fast. So I want to see what they can do. I think they'll be able to.
They're fast and they're accurate.
Yeah.
And you don't always get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that they will be able to disrupt Mahomes and Kelsey's connection. I think they'll hit that pretty hard. But I mean, that's going to open up other things, though.
But also, he hasn't been throwing to Kelsey as much.
No, that was because other people have been shutting that down. I mean, I think a lot of teams have figured out the formula how to do that.
Yeah.
But Kelsey comes in clutch. I mean, he can make the plays.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Well, Mahomes has that really great, coaching legacy behind him from Tommy Tuberville. So I think, if he uses a lot of the lessons that he learned from Tommy, he's really going to go far in this game.
I give you such a flourish and a thing for even knowing that, Steve.
that was good. I like that. That's fun.
That was a fun
It's
article.
the only thing that I've read about the Chiefs recently. So that's it. Like, really? Oh, made it up.
Okay, we got points in. So
I don't really have obviously a dog in this game. I don't even have a dog in the Puppy Bowl. But the my family historically is from Southeast Pennsylvania, so a lot of Birds fans in my extended family. So I'm sure they're all pulling for the Eagles right now.
Well,
so we'll see.
I've said it before. I can't lose in this game. If Philly wins, great, awesome, wonderful. If the Chiefs win, then Belichick and Brady lose, and that makes me win too. So I'm happy with that. So I don't really care. I hate Belichick and Brady. Yeah. Fuck them. I don't care. So either way, I'm going to be happy about this game.
Yeah, but isn't there any kind of comfort in seeing the division rival taken out?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely, right. But I mean, we talked about this. We have this kind of same conversation every year. I tend to look. Most of the time, I'm going to, when Philly played Washington, I wish a hellmouth had have opened and just swallowed them both, right? Mm-hmm. But kind of same thing we talked about last year, though, when I was kind of pulling for San Francisco. At the end of the day, if the National Football, the NFC wins, then that means that our conference was the better conference, which means that we were as a collective, we were the better teams, right? So that makes it look better on us. You get that? So on one hand, you screw your division rivals. On the other hand, I want the team that puts me out to win the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. Right? Because that means that your team, it took the Super Bowl champs to put you out. There's an argument that you were the second best team, and no one can break that argument because everybody else got defeated too. So, I'm kind of okay with that.
I've got a great trivia question for you.
Okay.
What is the one past Super Bowl matchup that can never happen again?
Probably be a team that's no longer.
I was going to say the Oilers were never in the Super Bowl.
They were never in it. I can tell you, Steve, it's not a team that's disappeared.
So,
well, maybe not disappeared, but maybe moved.
The Raiders haven't moved to a new division, have they?
It took me a long time to figure this out. Colts versus Jets.
Okay, yeah.
Because it was the time the Colts were in the AFC.
Yeah.
All day I was trying to figure that out last week. All day.
Was it a trivia question that you got?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think the response rate, the correct response rate to it was something like 8%. Got it right.
Oh.
It took me all day to figure that out because that's one area I'm good at Super Bowl trivia. I ain't good at general playoff trivia.
Yeah,
I'm not good at.
I'm not good at sports stats. I just don't have. I don't have the. I love the game. I don't try to memorize stats. Right. Yeah. I can't tell you how many yards Mahomes has thrown this season.
Right. Or, I can tell you when people played. I'm good at that. I'm good at that. I can tell you. I can. Tell you. If a team, has won in more than one decade. I can that kind of stuff I can do. But the stats like that, no. Nope. Not good. All right. And that concludes the sports section.
And that concludes comic book Bears football talk.
Okay. So we got our Super Bowls in. All right. Yep. It's not a misnomer. All right, Steve, you have some news tidbits. Do you want to just throw some stuff out there that happened recently?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think probably we're all aware of the ongoing Diamond bankruptcy drama. I mean, we talked about it at length last episode, but there's obviously there's ongoing developments and there's new things and changes and different publishers are making their choices on whether they're going to stay or go out on their own. And today there was actually on February 6th, there was a really great article published in the Comics Journal written by Bridget Alverson, where she kind of summarized a lot of what we've been seeing over the past couple of months. I mean, bankruptcy was they just filed on January 15th, so it's not even been a month. And we've gone wild with different changes and, a lot of announcements pretty much every day, and sometimes several times a day. There's something new popping up. They've got a better idea of the timeline now. So March, so next month, is when they're actually going to have the auction. And the divisions of Diamond that are up for sale, which is pretty much everything, would be officially auctioned off. Now, you do have Universal distributors that are the basically have already put in a bid for the game division. Their game division that distributes that, as well as toys and statues. I think they're really working on that. But also, they've more or less made it. I don't know if it's a done deal yet, but they're acting almost like it is for Diamond UK. So Diamond UK, right now, they're already making plans for the future. They're already pretty much all set.
And that's one of the few divisions that's solvent.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, they've been, with the exception of the COVID era, when there was a lot of like, well, we can't really get things from A to B anyway. They've pretty much stayed the course and actually have been pretty, like you said, solvent, but I think stable is even a better way of putting it. But they're fine. Universal is expected to be able to purchase them, as well as these other smaller divisions. But the rest of it, I mean, it's who knows at this point. I mean, there's multiple people that are in, that are looking at it, including the Jeppy family themselves, just taking on actual direct ownership of Diamond distributors. But essentially, everything has to happen. The sale has to happen by April. That's the deadline. So, not just for the real estate that they've got, but also as the terms of the Chapter 11 bankruptcy. I do have to say, there were two really good quotes that Bridget had in here. She interviewed two different people. One was Joe Murray. Actually, she interviewed a bunch of people, but one of them, Joe Murray, from the Blue Hen Comics in Newark, Delaware. And Bill, I think you have some familiarity with that comic shop.
Yeah, that was my LCS sold during college. I'm a Blue Hen. And that was my LCS during college. I am not aware of who the gentleman that was interviewed is. I knew the former owner, Paul Stiddick. But it was nice to see my LCS for 4 years in the news there.
Being presented. And I actually have to say, Murray had a really good quote here. We've been doing things this way for 30 years, but we never questioned whether it was the right way to do it. It was always difficult to fix a boat while it's on the water. And that's, it's a great way of putting the fact that because it's been essentially a monopoly for almost 30 years, a little over 30 years, there really hasn't been anybody stepping up to make any big changes. I think the last time anything kind of happened was when Marvel tried to go out on their own and just created a massive disaster. There have been problems. People have been talking about problems for 30 years. Nobody really likes a monopoly, but it's hard to kind of be able to see changes or even make any changes while you're all kind of stuck on the same ship. Also, Andrea Gilroy, who's at Book with Pictures in Eugene, Oregon, was another interviewee. She was talking about, some of the changes with the recent distributors. And she mentions Penguin Random House doesn't need me to survive. They don't need comic book shops. They're massive distributors of, books, periodicals, etc. Everywhere else. Comic books are a tiny part of their business, so they don't need the comic book shops. They've got Barnes and Nobles and Amazon and every other bookseller out there. But Diamond does need comic shops to survive, and it's been kind of a certain type of symbiotic relationship between comic retailers and Diamond for such a long time that now some of these comic shops are either they're getting out of the game, or they're trying to retool and refocus to find a new way to survive post-Diamond. And sometimes that means changing how you do things. Rather than ordering from just one wholesaler, now they've got multiples. They can order directly from publishers. They can order directly from other suppliers, or do something different. And that's kind of what everybody's going to be trying to do. I mean, the direct market comic business is going to have to make some changes. So, a lot of the old stalwarts are probably going to be getting out of the game altogether because, well, it's not what they want to do. They've been doing things one way for 30 years and don't want to change. And it's like, well, too bad. So now I guess it's time to go. But other stores are going to pivot and are going to be able to, keep things going, I think. Couple big announcements with publishers, though. IDW, just as recently as yesterday, was they had presented their financial outlook. It was not looking good. Their auditors basically said, yeah, we don't think they're going to remain in business. They did a review, and I think there was some negotiation going on with Penguin Random House, who essentially holds.
It's also difficult with a publisher like that really holds no important IP of its own.
Mm-hmm.
That's
not anymore. Yeah.
Well, what did they own?
Well, they were publishing some stuff for Marvel. They were doing.
Yeah, but what do they have? But I'm saying, what do they own? I think they own a part of 30 Days of Night, which is probably the biggest, franchise.
Yeah, they were always the licensed comics.
Yeah, they don't own, and even Dynamite owns Red Sonja, and
yeah,
a couple.
And IDW is known for like their artist editions and different things like that. But I mean, they're very reliant on other IPs,
on licensed and creator owned stuff.
Yeah, but they did just represent this, today. And Penguin Random House, I guess, has changed the terms, or at least loosened their terms a little bit, so they have enough cash to keep going until October, at least, which will, be well past the Diamond bankruptcy fallout. So they're okay. Massive has gone to Lunar, and so it's exclusive to Lunar, but they've also created something called Massive Indies, which they're inviting other small publishers to kind of join them and be sort of like a collective that's distributing under Massive, under Lunar. See if anybody bites. Not too sure. And also Diamond UK had a big change today. They announced Mad Cave and Tomorrow's Publishing are no longer going to be distributed by Diamond UK. They couldn't come to an agreement, so they are no longer doing that. So if any stores out in the UK want to get a hold of Mad Cave books or Tomorrow's books, or periodicals, then they're going to have to go direct or find some other way to do it.
Was it Mad Cave that had a bunch of issues with, there was a small press publisher that, had issues with creators, and I can't remember if it was Mad Cave or.
Oh no!
I think you're talking about Action Lab.
Action Lab. Okay. Action Lab. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I could not remember. I knew it was one of those.
And honestly, Scout Comics as well. So between Action Lab and Scout Comics, most recently, they've had a lot of issues. But Mad Cave, I'm not really sure exactly what precipitated this, but they're just not going to be distributing through Diamond UK. And Tomorrow's as well. I mean, it's very niche with Tomorrow's. I mean, those books are geared towards collectors.
I also appreciate the transparency that Tomorrow's has offered.
Yeah.
I was looking at
that. They were quick to address stuff too. They were very quick to address stuff too.
And
with
Bill,
IDW, I think Lock and Key is the other big thing that they may own part of.
Lock and Key. Yeah. Lock and Key, definitely. And that is good.
They've got like some Godzilla licenses. I mean, 30 Days of Night, but I don't see anything else. Yeah. They published March. They published, they called us Enemy, which was the
George Takei.
Yeah, George Takei graphic novel. But I mean, as far as ongoing, do they even have Usagi anymore?
That's a good question. Yeah,
they still have Turtles, right?
They do still have Turtles. I think they still have Rocketeer.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
a couple other things too, but I can't.
Power Rangers, I think, is still with them for a while. Or did that?
Are they, or did they go to? They're fully with Boom, right?
Did that fall? It's Boom. It's Boom because
Boom has.
Because the thing is with the Hasbro's acquisition of Power Rangers, the comic rights were, I'm confusing it with Boom, that they weren't going to be touched for a while. So, and that's was one of the reasons why the Hasbro Cinematic Universe got stalled. Was you have this big property now, Power Rangers, and you're not integrating it. But there's still some holds on that stuff.
Yeah. And then the final bit that I have from them is Image, of course, because they've gone to Lunar. Diamond UK basically is not going to be distributing them directly. So shop owners in the UK now will have to go through Lunar in the US to place orders for Image books. So that's probably going to result in a lot of delays for Image readers out there.
I also I wouldn't be surprised if Lunar develops a UK at least a European presence.
Yeah.
That was kind of the initial thought back in 2020.
Yeah.
But I know that they kind of put the kibosh on that for a little bit, but this might be a good opportunity for them to look at Europe again.
I'm sure this is an oversimplification, and I'm not saying I understand the publishing process at all, right? But it doesn't make sense to me that since we live in the digital age where things can be shipped across with PDFs, why it wouldn't be fairly simple for U.S. publishers to put a footprint in another continent and just have a printer over there to save shipping costs. Like you just you send the PDF, you hire a printer, they print it in whatever size format that, Bond S&A or whatever British comics are.
I think there are certain obligations to quality control. I think there are certain obligations to chain of custody. I think there are. I wouldn't be surprised if people hadn't explored that.
Right.
In the past, I mean, it's not. If you go on Discogs just for the musical equivalent, there's the Jacksonville printing, and then there's the Hollywood printing, and the Scranton printing that you'll see through that stuff.
It could also be a rights issue.
I think there's possibly rights issues. I don't think we are even close to versed enough to make a.
No, and like I said, that's why I put that caveat. I'm not saying I understand or know it. It just in my brain.
Honestly, Caleb, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, my stuff's speculation. But I imagine some of the stuff that we cited are probably some of the reasons.
Well, and if you look at publishing contracts, I mean, I've looked at some of them, and they typically have, continental publishing rights in them. So maybe that's part of the reason. Distribution rights in North America, distribution rights in Pan Asia and stuff like that. So I don't know. It just, you would think that'd be the path of least resistance.
Could be. I would imagine so, but this might be the opportunity to go and do it, especially when you have the third of the big three who is no longer distributing through the easiest channel, and it's now more costly for them to ship those books across to Europe. We're not talking about any potential tariffs either, because that's just gonna. So Victor Rose, who's joined us, hey. I believe Usagi Yojimbo is at Dark Horse now. Okay. I think you're right. You're right. That sounds right. But yeah, so that's what I have for the Diamond news. There's always a lot, and I'm sure in the next 2 weeks we're going to have like a hell of a lot more. The second news story. Oh, hold on.
Just wondering about this, about Diamond's real estate.
Yes.
Do either of you know if that includes what used to be the Jeppe Museum and the Sports Legend Museum in Inner Harbor? Because I imagine that's probably their most valuable, valuable real estate holding, given the location.
But is it owned by Diamond or is it owned by Jeppe? I
don't know.
Yeah,
because that might be. Because I think there's obviously there is some kind of ownership finagling that I'm sure the family has done over the years, because they're in a position to buy Diamond Distributing through this whole bankruptcy process. So there must be something else that's not tied into this.
And on the off,
I do know that their office building, however, is part of it. So the Diamond offices are part of this, and if they don't get it cleared up by April, then they're out, as are the employees.
And on the off chance that John Westoff is watching this instead of the tally on his last hours of the Kickstarter campaign, John, I apologize. I haven't done it in years, but yes, I just ate on the show. These just look too good, and I had a.
I couldn't tell what you're eating. I knew it was either Doritos or Cheetos. I couldn't tell though.
Well, there was one particular episode that John cited where I was like, I basically ate a sandwich through the show. And this is pre-video, so
oh God. You heard the munching? I'm sure I recall which episode, but oh boy.
Okay.
But yeah, we have a second news story here, and it's going to be short and sweet. And given the pre-show chat reaction from Caleb, I think it could be a fun one. So Rob Liefeld, it was reported through the Hollywood Reporter and Variety and whatever, that he was very vocal on both his podcast as well as in a separate interview with Hollywood Reporter talking about it, that he is done with Marvel 100%. He's no longer doing anything with them because of how he was treated after the Deadpool and Wolverine premiere. He wasn't invited to the parties. Disney took a bunch of pictures with him, and they didn't use them for the promos, and they're not available online or whatever. And then also there was some kerfuffle about how the credits were being presented. He wanted actually to have his credit before in the top of the movie, the opening credits, similar to
Siegel
and Schuster for Superman films. But Marvel said no, and apparently Kevin Feige doesn't treat comic creators very well, and gave him the cold shoulder. And okay, I guess there is probably some truth
very well, or does he not treat Rob Liefeld very well?
Apparently, he doesn't treat Rob Liefeld very well. I get it. They're not being coddled by the film studio, and Disney is just sort of like, they're just being counters at this point. So who knows? I don't know.
Gail Simone did confirm that she was invited to the after party.
Boy.
I know we have him saying that he's done with Marvel. Can we get that in writing?
He did. It's like
the 10th time he said that too,
Yeah. At the end of the day, here's what my big problem is with this. And Bill, and you touched on it a little bit. There are some valid points here being made about creators' rights and stuff like that. And I would care if I thought he cared. He doesn't care. This dude's been ripping away credit from other artists and stuff his whole life too. Fuck him. All he's mad about is the fact that they didn't invite him to an after party because nobody wants to be around his pretentious bitch ass. Yeah. Like, the dude's got an ego that you can't fit in Texas.
You sure there's no other reason?
Who can say?
Okay.
They're
must have a cold, allergies or something.
No one wants to hear about his...
I've always felt that any creator credit for Deadpool should include Marv Wolfman and George Perez. Anyway, so
it definitely should include Fabian Nicieza.
Well, he
is co-creator. Co-creator.
He's credited.
Joe Kelly. There's lots of people.
Yes, and actually, Rob Liefeld did say, to his credit, he did say that he credits Joe Kelly for breaking the fourth wall, like that side of Deadpool, which is the side that I think most people associate with the character.
Yeah,
is being that sort of fourth wall breaking Chaos Demon.
But it's just like everybody. No one wants to hang out with you, dude. Like that's the issue. It's not anything to do with credit, man. It's because you suck as a human. Like no one wants to be around you.
He's just pissed that nobody said nice pants when he walked by.
Sorry. You tried to buy everybody's love.
We're on your side about in certain circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do think opening credits that there are some properties where it's warranted. You know.
Yeah.
But the thing is he only brings this stuff up when it can be used as a crutch for his own ego. Right? Yeah. The dude's not exactly any other time going to bat for creators' rights.
No. And there are also plenty of creators that he hired that, you know, had to fight tooth and nail to get paid.
Right.
Yeah.
I just whatever.
Yeah.
Womp womp womp.
There you go.
I also didn't get invited to the after party.
Oh, that's funny, Caleb, because I did. I don't like
you petty bitch.
Petty bitch.
I tried to call you, but it just didn't go through.
I don't feel bad about what I said about you on the bathroom wall.
Is that why I've been getting all those texts?
Oh, honey, they know it's true.
Girl, you know it's true.
I'm an attorney. I put footnotes. there was citation. See section 47B. We've got a Cliff on Comics has joined us. Hello,
hey, Cliff.
Hello,
how you doing? For a time, call Steve.
For a time. Not even a good time. Just for a time. For a time.
I'm sorry. Okay.
We love you.
We love you, Steve. We do.
Now it's all worth it. It's all worth it to hear that.
Want to talk some comic books?
Comic books.
All right, Steve.
Fun side.
You've got an issue number 1 to talk about. Why don't you tell the people all about it?
I do. As I've been dropping everything around me right now. But I do have a new comic to talk about. It is continuing with our theme from last week, which was all about DC All In. I decided to pick up the new Aquaman. I haven't really read much of Aquaman since Kelly Sue DeConnick was on it a couple of years ago.
There hasn't been
much I really love
since then.
Well, I know there hasn't been a lot of that. It did continue for a time.
Yeah.
It's been done for maybe a year. It's been a full year since the last volume ended.
I think the last volume was Aquaman.
Well, no, but I'm like a proper Aquaman series. I think because I remember Aquaman was around, but that was I consider that a separate series from the Aquaman book.
Aquaman
Volume 8
was after Kelly Sue.
Yeah, that was after.
Well,
yeah. No, but I mean
Aquaman. I'm taking a look right now.
But the Aquaman itself, like just Aquaman series, I think ended over a year ago.
Kelly Sue was what, 3 years ago, 4 years ago?
21 to 22, I think.
Yeah. No, the series itself ended in 2021.
Gotcha.
Then it must have been 2020 to 2021 that she was on. Yeah. Because I knew it was pretty much a full year, and I really enjoyed that. But that was kind of the last Aquaman series that I fully read. But with Volume 8, and I'll bring it up now because this is the copy that I got. This is Tula Lote's variant cover, which I love. Tula Lote cover. I love her artwork so much. Just that painterly style and the fact that everybody looks like sophisticated and super sexy. Like they're just about to rip everything off and like go to town. But this portrait of Mira is just gorgeous. I love it. So very happy with that. Now this is what the actual A cover is. You see Aquaman riding on a shark. I don't know where Storm or Stormy is. Missing Stormy here.
Storm. Who's Stormy?
Storm. I like Stormy. I know it's Storm.
Jesus.
But yeah, so here it is, and this book is being put out by Jeremy Adams, who is also pulling a lot of writing duties over at DC right now. With awesome Caleb with the digital copy, with the Green Lantern series, and also the new Green Lantern Fractured Spectrum one shot that just came out as well. He's also writing Flash Gordon, which I didn't realize. So that's pretty cool. So he's busy. He's keeping busy. And then also John Timms on art over here. John, you might have remembered or might have seen his work with Wonder Comics' Young Justice. He's also been on Harley Quinn, and I believe Batman Incorporated, Volume 2, I think was his, that he worked on as well. And we've also got Rex Locus on color, and
going back to John Timms, let's give it up for the Alphabet Mafia, Superman, son of Kal-El.
Yep,
right. Yeah, he also did that too.
Yeah.
He's been doing a lot, and I like his style. It's definitely it's not the most innovative, but it's strong, and you know what he's doing. He does have a really good job of making epic images here. And this was just a random splash page. I mean, this was just like the second or third page into the book, showing this fight with a giant tentacled sea demon, very Cthulhu-like, who doesn't make any other appearance. It's just there, just for the splash page. But Caleb mentioned.
Yeah, so this page threw me off when I saw it. Like, I think the background is beautiful, but like,
oh yeah,
I don't understand this font that they have used. It looks like it's off of a Trix box. Like, is Silly Rabbit Aquaman or for kids? Like, I don't understand what's happening with this font. It does not match the background. Like, and lettering matters, right? And so this is one of those really. I mean, and I'm being dead serious. This is one of those moments where comics are a culmination of several things. They're a culmination of story and visual art and font and color and things like that. Everything about this works, right? Everything about this works really well, except for the font. And it is upsetting to me how much the font just pulled me out of this moment. Like, I was really looking forward to reading this. Hadn't read an Aquaman book in a long time. I liked the creative team. First couple of pages looked great. And then I hit this and I'm just like, the font. And I'm just like, what? Why? Why? Like, it just takes away so much. It doesn't fit with the vibe of the book or anything else. So
we need to chat with Dave Sharp about that. But otherwise, I do have to say, the lettering in the rest of the book is great.
Oh, it looks great. Yeah, this is the only thing that threw me off.
This could just be.
I don't know. The thing that to just kind of go on this point, the classic Aquaman logo. The like arch thing with looks like the bubble letters.
Yeah.
That's my favorite comic logo of all time.
Oh, it's fantastic. My
favorite one of all time. Why they don't use it is beyond me. Maybe you could do like a more modernized version of it. They have done that at times, but I absolutely love that logo, and it's beyond me why they don't use it.
Well, I mean, everybody's got to try to be as contemporary as possible. I'm sure they'll go back to it at some point.
I went back to the bullet. So, I mean, if anybody will go back to a classic design, it'll be DC. But
DC,
yeah. I just don't.
But anyway, so this book takes place post Absolute Power, and one of the things that happened in Absolute Power was that all the heroes had their powers taken away, and then most of them got them back. Not all of them did, and some of them got back different power sets. And one of the things that Aquaman found himself is in possession of Aqua. It's watermancy, aquamancy, water kinesis that Mira normally has. So now he's got the power to control water as well as communicate with sea creatures. And so Mira and he go out and find themselves trying to rescue a plane that is falling out of the sky. And he uses it as an opportunity to train himself on his new power set. It goes really well. It's very cool. He's learned how to do this. But then, of course, he's got to go right back to Atlantis, where he's going to do the boring stuff of being king. In his case, it is not good to be the king. It is boring as crap. And interestingly enough, one of the things that is brought to his attention by Jackson, one of the Aqua lads, is a glowing pearl. And thank you to editorial for mentioning that this is the same pearl from the Flashpoint Beyond miniseries from a couple of years ago, as well as some other issues here and there between the Flash and I think Raven and Bolt. But there's obviously something really powerful and interesting and interdimensional to do with this pearl. So of course, they're going to set it aside until later in the issue to address it. So Aquaman goes, fights a giant, aqua beast using his new power set. But when he gets back, Atlantis is gone. All the people are gone. Most of the buildings are gone or just rubble. And the only thing left is this pearl. So, of course, he takes it to the Watchtower. He, enlists the help of Batman and Wonder Woman to go and try and find, what happened. And they follow an energy signature to a portal under the sea that's reacting to the energy resonance of the pearl. And Aquaman's like, well, I've got to follow this and figure out where my family is. My family's been taken, my people, my kingdom, everything's gone. I've got to figure this out. And after he goes through the portal, what does the portal change into but a giant Omega sign, which means dark side. And from the solicits from this book and the next couple of issues, we realize he has been teleported to the new absolute universe. So he is going to be acting in a way here as the crossover connection, at least for now, the only crossover connection until Booster Gold makes his reappearance to the new absolute line of comics. Now, this is not absolute Aquaman. It is still standard DC Universe Aquaman Prime. So we'll just see how a Prime hero can survive in the much harsher and more, let's just say, not as bright and optimistic universe of the absolute universe. So I don't know. I'm intrigued with this. This didn't hit me right out of the park as like, oh my God, I have to continue reading this. But I'm going to give it a chance because I've been loving everything that's been coming out for the Absolute line. And I'd like to see sort of the DC Universe take, like the main Prime DC Universe take on the Absolute universe and see how these characters interact right now. Because I'm sure, obviously, down the line, we're going to have a major interaction between DCU and DC Absolute. So this will be kind of like the first taste of that. So hopefully, Jeremy Adams can, kind of write a way that's going to really intrigue us and set us up for something really exciting for a big crossover in the future. So I don't know. What did you guys think? Bill, we can't hear you.
Well, I gotta fix that then. Yeah. I liked it. I didn't love it. I was surprised because it is Jeremy Adams writing it, and with his work on the Flash, and then later with Green Lantern, he gave stuff space to breathe. I really think there was a 6-issue story here that they could have told of him, coming back, of him having Mira's powers, of him being bored being the king, but there's nobody else better for the job, of him, saying outright, God, I love being a hero, at one point in the book. I thought there was a 6-issue story there, which could have then led into this. So it feel a little too accelerated to get from the first page of the story to the last one.
Like compressed and rushed, basically. Yeah.
Because I just think they missed an opportunity.
Yeah.
There.
And
I really think that.
I don't disagree with you. My issue is that everything I wanted out of this book was kind of in the last 5 pages of it. And that's what I really wanted to see more of, and what we got for the bulk of the book. And again, I think it's fine. It's lukewarm. I'm tepid on it. I don't dislike it at all, but I'm not. I don't even know that I can say that I am going to read issue 2. I just don't know. But I might, because there's stuff in there I want to see. But it was a lot of the status quo. It's a lot of stuff I've read before. I felt like okay, so yes, he's king and he's miserable. We've seen that. His family disappeared again. So it's like one or the other. It's just like, how many times has, and they do the same thing with Namor. Like, he shows up and all of a sudden his family's gone, and I'm just like, it's bro, you're the sovereign of the biggest nation in the world. Like, how do you not set up for this again, like for the 17th time? That's my only issue. It was a lot of kind of treading ground I've already crossed. And then in the last 5 pages, you got to what I really wanted to see, which was how this plays into the absolute universe and the happenings that are going on now. I do think it was cool. I always get giddy when we see editorial notes, and I didn't read those stories that it referenced back to, so I appreciated that, because then I knew what was going on. But I do think you're right. There's a larger story to be told in there, but I also think that story's been told a couple dozen times. And so I really just wanted, like, okay, we need to rehash that again? Let's see what's going on here, because to me, the real fun here is I want to see more about how the Ultimate Universe is going to affect our universe. I'm really loving DC all across the board right now, because it does feel fresh. It feels like maybe novel's not the right word, but it feels like a very timely and well polished and kind of sophisticated take for the time. And so I wanted more of that. And have we seen, I know we've seen absolute Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman. Have there been any other absolute characters that we've seen across the board yet?
Not yet, but they are coming out in the next couple of months. We're going to have absolute Martian Manhunter, absolute Flash, and
Green Lantern.
Absolute Green Lantern, yeah. So they are coming together, the absolute versions of the major players.
And then if I can just interject here, there was something towards the end of the book that I like seeing. There have been times where Aquaman may as well have been in his own universe.
Yeah.
I love Kelly Sue's take on it, but it had nothing to do with the rest of the DC universe. Same thing with Aquaman Sword of Atlantis. It was a fine continuation of the series, but there was no connective tissue. Here we definitely have that. I right now I'm giddy when I do see Watchtower. Right now, it's like, it's the Watchtower. This happened yesterday. And I like to see that integration.
That's why you love. It's why you love the question book.
Yep. Well,
it's all
which I read, and it was awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
I want every book. I want every book to have a scene of the Watchtower right now.
Yeah.
As FYI, James Figueredo has joined us. Hey, James. Good evening, handsome people, he says. He was mentioning back to Victor that, they are publishing huge-ass collections called Usagi Yojimbo Saga over at Dark Horse on the Usagi books. While Victor's been picking up the floppies, there are collected editions from Dark Horse that are available. So just wanted to mention that. Ooh.
Okay, over to me. I do apologize. I do have a sneeze coming at some point, so I may have to go on mute. But last week I was the main 2 weeks ago, I have to say, I was the main instigator of having a full all-in episode, and I needed something other than DC right now. But I'm so happy where DC's at. I was so happy to get this. So I'm not buying a lot of Marvel books, and I think a lot of people can make that statement as well right now. But one that I did pick up was, and I'll continue with it, is the latest version of West Coast Avengers. Now, West Coast Avengers, during its original existence, this was the more fun book. I think with Avengers tends to be the serious, like the main A tends to be the very serious book. And, whether it was the period where Steve Englehart was writing it, or Byrne, or Roy Thomas in the original run, it seemed that they let their hair down more, that it was more traditionally comic booky stuff. We don't exactly have that here, but there is a fun element to it. And some of it is the conceit of the book. So the West Coast Avengers are going to be formatted as a kind of rehabilitation league. You'll see on the front cover, we have 5 of the 6 members right there. We have Iron Man, which is Tony Stark. We have Rhodey as War Machine. Jessica Drew as Spider-Woman, though she wasn't. So Jessica wasn't an original member from the first run. Her counterpart Julia was. And then you have Firestar, who's new to this, and then there's Ultron. So Ultron is, I don't know if you can call computer reformed, but possibly reformatted, and for a variety of reasons, Tony and Rhodey have trust in this version of Ultron, which is effectively the original version. I'm not exactly sure how things are going to transpire with that information. There's also another member who, during the Secret Empire series, was known as Killer Watt. He's now going by Blue Bolt, and he has to check into prison every night. But during the day, he's on day release, and he's acting as a member of the West Coast Avengers for, again, as we said, rehabilitation. And in terms of the other members, there's stuff that went on with Jessica and with Angelica Jones, where she was during the Krakoa era, that they need a little bit of PR re-enhancement too. So that's the collection that's there. And again, it's operating on the West Coast. The series starts off with, some minor action. There's a lot of people after Tony. Same usual suspects: Stain International, AIM. He ends up on the West Coast for this team, but he didn't have his costume with him, so he has to go into an old storage space and get the classic version of the 80s Iron Man outfit, and he doesn't exactly fit into it. He's put on a few pounds. Steve, if you could just show that that graphic to provide that there, so you can see that there's some tape going on there as he makes his first appearance as Iron Man.
Tape, car batteries. Yeah.
So that's going to be the conceit of the team, is this sort of rehabilitation effort, this rehabilitation team. And with the concept of Ultron, it turns out that there were Ultron offspring that didn't exactly take to Ultron's new version of being on the side of humanity. They are, in a sense, in that they want to better humanity, but it's not something that the heroes can really ascribe. So there is the first arc is called the Ultron Gospel. And Steve, if you can just go to one of the other graphics there, you would have to go forward. You see him there, but this is the one, which is kind of like the number one son of Ultron, and he has wings. He's basically a super Ultron, and they want to bring people into their Ultron fold. And who are they bringing in? People who are terminally ill. It basically started off in the series where the Killer Watt, Blue Bolt, was in the hospital, and the woman next to him in the hospital basically has inoperable cancer, and she goes over to the Ultron Gospel, and they basically eliminate her body and keep her essence and self in a new Ultron body. She's going to live a lot longer than she would have. And that's appealing to a lot of people. So there's commentary. They involve the Illuminati. And some of the concerns are, today it's a few dozen. Tomorrow it's going to be hundreds. Very soon it's going to be thousands that are going to be become zealots for this Ultron Gospel. So that's where we are. There's also some very superhero-y things. They clash with Flag Smasher. There's a lot of internal strife between people. Firestar with her issues with Nimrod is not exactly comfortable being around robots right now. So there's a lot going on, and it's a team that's in its growing pains. But I really enjoyed the stuff. The writer is Jerry Duggan, who's been on, so many Marvel titles in the past. The artist is Danny Kim, and you can see some of the covers there, the main covers that I got. And, it's nice to have that Left Coast fun Avengers back in some form. So that's what I got.
Yeah, I need to get on this and read this. So I'm as an old Avengers fan, I'm going to feel some kind of way about seeing Ultron on the side of right, to some degree. Did they ever address what had, the last time I saw Ultron, he was like symbiotically bound to Hank Pym and launched off into space. Did they address that at all?
In a way, in that they mentioned that he's severed from Hank. And plus, given Hank's history with West Coast, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him soon.
Yeah.
They mention it, but it doesn't get in the way of the story. I don't know specifically what has transpired with Ultron prior to this. And I think that's a nice mechanism to say it doesn't matter. You don't need to have the whole story. You just need to know that Tony and Rhodey trust him right now.
Well, and at the very least, all you have to do is be like, well, it's a new Ultron body. Like, Ultron, that happened, and that may be still floating out there in space. Here's a new Ultron.
But you also have some moments in the book here. There's one kid who's like seeing them land, and they're like, holy shit, it's Ultron. I'm scared to shit. So they do have some strands like that in there. But
well, I mean, it also leaves it open for, a focus on an issue later down the line to kind of figure out what happened in between. So that's, it could be very, very comic sense. Like, well, it's actually Hank Pym's full consciousness in this Ultron body and whatever. But it could be really interesting. But I do like that. I do like that it's giving sort of like a fresh start. I mean, obviously Firestar is bringing her baggage from Krakoa, because she was in the Fall of X. She was used as as sort of a double agent, as a spy with Orcus. So she basically, had to live and work around the people that were trying to eliminate every mutant.
And they do talk about that. I mean, the first time we see her, she's in a bar drinking her sorrows away.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's really interesting, having her, dealing with this trauma on the same team as Tony, who obviously has had a lot of trauma in his life.
And Steve, can you just show that the Iron Man with the tape around his belt? I absolutely love this image.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
I absolutely love this image.
So I hope like I said, I want to go read this. Whenever Ultron shows up, to me, that says that the story is going to have a lot about relationships tied into it places, because I mean, Ultron's whole thing is, searching for family and that kind of thing. And, Duggan's a very savvy writer. He also knows the history. So there's lots of people who could show up. I would like to see him play with Jocasta. I'd like to see Jocasta come back. I would, forgot Firestar. Where's Vance? What's Justice doing these days? There's a lot that they can play around with there, in terms of relationships. So I'm curious to see. It's going to be so weird for me to see Ultron on the side of right and not, just instinctively compare him to Vision, and try to see, how is this different? How is this a different character than Vision would be?
And there's also some interesting takes on him. Like, he doesn't take a lead in a lot of the fights because he's concerned about his power level.
Right.
So it's kind of, they even mentioned, like, I didn't know Ultron would be this timid. So, another thing about Ultron is self-awareness. That's always at the core of a lot of his stories. So here we have it in a kind of different context. Instead of conquest, it's practicality. So there was enough here to keep me going on this, definitely. Plus, it's fun. It's a fun book.
It seems like it.
It's a fun
I love
book.
that there's like a bullet riddled Ferrari in the background.
I mean, well, I'm all about the fun books.
So we've had a little Marvel, we've had a little DC. How about we go and dabble in one of the smaller publishers? I want to take us over to Boom Studios.
Dabble away.
I'll take us to Boom Studios with a writer that has had, very important works and very good works at both of the houses of Big Two and Marvel, DC and Marvel, and that is Greg Pak. And Greg Pak is doing different stuff these days. He's writing, he had Met Cadet U, and the sequel to that come out. He's doing lots of stuff that really focus on. They're not necessarily some of them are all ages books, but they really focus on the moralisms and things that we're seeing. He's being very subversive in his work, but he's making subversive works that are also can be read by many different ages. And so he has got a new series out now, and I think we're about 6 issues in, if not more, maybe 7 issues in, over at Boom, and it's called Lawful, and it's over at, again, Boom Studios, but Greg Pak is writing it, Diego Galindo on the art, and Irma Navila is doing the colors there. Not quite sure who's, let's see, lettered by Simon Bolin, which does a lot of work over there for Boom. And so this story takes place in a land, like if you look at the cover, you're like, okay, that has like a little bit of a saga vibe, right? You've got humans mixed with animals. There's all kinds of stuff like that. But and visually that you'd be right, but there's a different take on this. This story takes place in a kingdom called New Sanctum, and New Sanctum is a haven. You find out as you read through the issues, it was not always inhabited by the people who live there now. The characters that you see, and really the story is about this character named Sung, who is the younger boy kind of crouching down here on the cover, and then his friend Eris, who is the individual there with the tail and the horns. But these individuals are a little bit of a different race that escaped their planet when it basically imploded and came here. It's kind of the vibe to it. But people like Eris are in this world are not naturally born with horns and tails. They're not a different species. There's something about this land where if you do something wrong, right? If you do something wrong, then something happens to your body. If you lie, you cheat, if you steal, if you jaywalk, if you do something wrong, like that is just, kind of from this black and white standpoint wrong, something bad will happen. And that's why you get characters like Eris, like she breaks the rules. She does bad things. She bucks society and she grows horns. And when you do that, it's a visual representation of your wrongdoing. It's the proverbial scarlet letter, right? And so everybody can see that you've sinned. Everybody can see that you've wronged. And if you don't do those things, then you don't have these manifestations on your body. So Sung, who is really, like I said, kind of the focal point of the story, he comes from this long legacy of generals or knights, that from this world that protect them from encroaching monsters. The book opens up with the scene when Sung and Eris are kids and they're standing along this moat wall, and Eris is picking up this big stone and she's going to throw it into the lake, and Sung says, no, if we do that, we'll get in trouble. Bad things will happen. And so she kind of double dog dares him, and he does. And then he gets these scales on his chest that pop up. And because of that, now at the same time, this monster comes erupting out of the water, and Sung's father, who's again he's like the head honcho of these protectors, these knights, almost kind of like Knights Templar, shows up, stabs the monster through the chest with a sword, kills him. And then explains to his son, hey, you messed up. We told you don't throw things in there. Now you're going to have these on your chest for the rest of your life. And if you continue to do bad, you'll continue to distort your body and you'll be an outcast. We'll have to kick you out of the kingdom. You'll be a criminal. We don't do that. And I'm a public figure, right? Like people look to me. And so I can't have you out here doing these things. Kind of shames him a little bit, right? And in that moment, Sung decides he's going to dedicate his life to being like his father. He's going to do the right thing, and always, he's going to very purposefully not do wrong things. Eris takes the other route. She's a little bit of a rebel, right? She gets into some trouble, and she ends up having like animal claws and a tail and horns. It's an interesting dynamic, but as you know, I think as we all know, that's not the way the universe works, right? If you see somebody needing help across the street, but you don't have the street light where you can walk, what do? What's right? What's wrong? Do you go help that person and jaywalk and break the law, or do you wait and watch that person struggle? What's the morally correct answer there? And Pac makes them wrestle with that in kind of in that exact same scenario, and it really goes to show, hey, like, and talks about in certain situations, like you are kind when you spare people with little white lies. But if you do that, something will happen, and you can be, you'll be ostracized, you'll be kicked out of the kingdom. And this is kind of a, fascist organization, a fascist world, where if, they judge these people who have these physical manifestations of their quote unquote wrongdoing, and if at some point they kick them out. And of course there's resistance to that. This kind of these folks kind of team up and they say, hey, we're not grotesque, we're not monsters, we have horns, look, we're reflecting nature, we're beautiful. And so you're seeing these two societies clash. And our boy Sung, he is at the age now where he's about to take a very big test that's going to determine whether or not he can be one of the knights, he can be one of the protectors, he can follow in his father's footsteps. And he does. He takes the test and he passed. Which in one scenario, that's great, because we find out that his father's passed away in this point, but his mother, and we don't know how yet, at least as far as I'm gone, but his mother is ill, and we find out that she's receiving medicine because they're part of the quote unquote inner circle. But the medicine only gets given to people who are in the inner circle, and the only people who are in the inner circle are these kind of pure people who don't have these physical manifestations of wrongdoing. This kind of elitist society. Well, he saves her life by becoming this person. And he's very quickly put into a scenario where he has to make a choice regarding his friend. And it is it blurs the lines in what's right and what's wrong. So Pac is really playing with these kind of moral ambiguities on things, and making you question, well, what is the right choice? What, and what do we do? And he does some of that with Met Cadet U. I think he's really wrestling with, he's taking these kind of very important subjects that we deal with on a national basis, right? They can be anything, global affairs. What is right? What is wrong? Do you go and, drop bombs on these people? Well, that seems like a bad idea because it's wrong. Well, if you don't, what happens when they're a terrorist organization, they go murder and kidnap, right? So what is right and what is wrong? It's a gray area, right? He's distilling this down in decisions that young people can understand by looking at the universe around them. And I think that's important, because at the end of the day, literature and art is supposed to make you think. It is supposed to challenge you. And, we hear this all the time about the infantilization of comics and stuff like that. And to some degree, I'm like, well, I can take a very clear look around the world, and it very much seems like a lot of the adults around us have not gotten picked up on very basic moral things, like you shouldn't mistreat people. You shouldn't be a bastard of the highest order. And so maybe society needs some of these books that kind of distills it down into maybe a 5th grade reading level, so that, maybe the adults in the room can kind of pick up on some of these cues. I don't know. But I really have enjoyed what I've read of this book. I think it's a fun work. I think it's challenging, but it's challenging in a way that I could give this to somebody who's not it's not Watchmen, right? So I can give that to him too. So the art is fantastic. I love the designs. It's for a boom book, it's hit or miss on the art sometimes, but they just do a wonderful job with the production of this book. Go check it out. You can read it digitally. I read it on one of my comic apps. Really, really fun story.
Well, I like what you were saying about Greg Pak, and I think I agree. I think he did that with Met Cadet, where he takes very lofty moral concepts, what constitutes goodness, what constitutes heroism, bravery, and his protagonists are usually young in these like creator owned stories. And here's a situation where he puts his characters in what's more like stark good and bad than every time you do something bad, it physically manifests on you.
Yeah.
when there are so many things that one does that could have bad consequences, but at the time seem good. So good intentions and, bad intentions, good outcomes, bad outcomes on personal choices. It's very interesting and very kind of crazy. But if you're trying to explain these concepts, I think Greg Pak does a really good job of exhibiting where the moral ambiguity comes in and where somebody who's relatively innocent might see that grayness, that sort of like that border is squishy, and understand how to present it. Because it almost sounds like this is a sci-fi fantasy version of Charles Burns' Black Hole, but with less, like sexually transmitted mutations.
And to that point, around about the second issue or the third issue, you start to learn that, some of what's going on here is bullshit. Some of this is it doesn't just happen naturally. There's something happening here that is controlled and weaponized to a degree to punish people. So you start to see, okay, maybe wow, like that. So these moral standards, not even the people who are enforcing them aren't following them. So
wearing your sin on your body doesn't really necessarily constitute fairness or even justice in this. And I think it is a very complex and high concept, but it sounds like, like Pak is really good at doing. He's
got a very good grasp on it.
Yeah. And I think that comes from him being an Eagle Scout, that, he takes morality on a very basic level, and then, because he's been very open about his struggles of continuing with scouting concerns, given their history of homophobia, and also I think as someone biracial, he's very good at duality.
Oh, he is
very good at that. That's right. I haven't read anything of his in quite a while, though.
I think you'd really enjoy Met Cadet. I think you'd enjoy this. I think you'd enjoy Met Cadet more. But I do think. I think you'd like this.
Okay. I might sample it. Like I said, I'm recharged, and that's going to extend to independent stuff too. So
cool. Awesome. Thanks.
Now, Caleb, do you want to stay on the mic for your next book, or
sure? I never mind being the meat and the Bill and Steve sandwich show. So we'll stick with the indies. Yeah, see, I knew I was going to get something out of that. So I will take us from a fantasy book. I get, if you could call that a fantasy book, a little bit of fantasy and sci-fi, to a little bit more slice of life, and something that is, just in some ways it is about remembering. And in some ways, it's about reconnection, or maybe just discovery. And so, and I think you'll kind of understand what I mean as I kind of go along and say this. This comes from a publisher I've never read before. It's called Avery Hill Publishing, and the book is called Adrift on a Painted Sea. Now, this is written, and the cartooning is done by Tim Bird. But the book is scattered throughout with these oil paintings that you see on the cover here too, that were actually painted by Tim's mother, Sue Bird. Now, Sue was not a professional artist per se, and this is it's memoir. All right, so this is a real story. It's a real recounting of these situations, and it's Tim telling the story of his memory of his mother and kind of reclaiming how he thought about her, what he knows about her. And as he's doing this, he talks about his mother's history with art. She, as a young person, she loved to draw and paint. She submitted a painting as part of a school project and got it put into a major museum where it stayed there, and she kind of caught the bug. So throughout her entire life, she took painting classes, and it was a hobby, but it was a hobby that she was extremely dedicated to. Her house, all of her paintings were hung on the walls. There was art everywhere, under the beds, everywhere. And most of it's landscapes. She painted what she saw. She painted a lot of beach scenes. Most of it were, kind of this, I forget if the book actually says where it takes place at, but it reminds me of the, maybe the Maine coast, or the coast up on the northeastern part of the United States, very rocky, not sandy like Florida beaches, but that's what it kind of reminds me of. And as Tim walks through, he talks about being a child, and they would go to these places that they would see, and they'd collect seashells, and that's how he learned about nature, and he kind of got to see it through his mom's eyes. And then he would look at the paintings that she would do, and unfortunately, Tim's mom does get ill. Tim's mom gets cancer at some point, so it is a very hard read if you've ever kind of had a family member go through that. But she still paints as she goes through that. And unfortunately, I mean, without spoiling too much, unfortunately, she passes away, and he has to deal with that grief. He has to deal with his father, who is left behind, and he and his sister, they help him with the process. And the story talks a little bit about how they stay at the hospital and they go and visit her mother. And this is happening during COVID. This actually takes place in Europe somewhere. Sorry about that, but it does look very much like the kind of the Northeast coast. But COVID happens, and they're only able to go in one at a time to see her as she's in the cancer ward. And sometimes she feels like she's getting better, sometimes she's not. But as he's going through his mother's things, and he takes a moment after she passes away to start really trying to go back and find out anything he can about her life. And it turns out that the painting that she had always told her kids that was the painting that got put in the museum probably wasn't that painting, and he doesn't know why she told him that, and there's no answers. And on some level, that's a pretty simplistic thing. It's like, okay, well, she was a teenager, and maybe she didn't remember. Maybe she, after the years went by, she just didn't know. Maybe it was something else. Maybe she just didn't want to show him the painting that she did. But he'll never get that answer. So there is like this unfinished story of things that he starts discovering about his mom as he's looking back at her, and seeing now these old things through the lens of losing her and through the lens of her absence, and then kind of reclaiming who she was to him. At the same token, talking to his father. There's not really a thread here, right? There's not really and then this happens, and then this happens, and there's not and this causes this, and here's the end game. There's not really any finality here to Tim's story, other than it's just him exploring the memory of his mother through the art that she left behind, through these landscapes, and through the world that she saw and she painted through her fingertips. And that is cathartic to him for a little bit, because I think it helps him explore his life. It also brings back memory of the things that they did together, the trips they took and stuff like that. And I think this is just a way for Tim really to work through grief, right? To work through grief, to work through memory, and to really figure out in his own way, because obviously he's an artist, right? You look at this page, and his mother painted this landscape in the background, but the cartooning of the birds and the woman whose hat is flying off, and the gondola that's being pulled up the hill, that's him. He walks in her shoes to some extent. And so I think he's trying to wrestle with what that means. He has this connection to his mother through art, and also through experience, and how do those things intertwine? What's the overlap there? And what does that say about who he is and where he's going in life? And he wrestles with that just a little bit, in some pretty interesting ways. Again, you're not going to get to the end of this book, and there's not like any completion here. It opens up, it goes on, as life tends to do. But I found the work wonderful. I found it to be both heavy and light at the same time, because you want to cry. It's one of those situations like you want to cry and smile at the same time. As this person is just being very, very wholesome and very vulnerable. So I really encourage you, if you can find some place where you can get Avery Press books, to check out Tim's work, and especially this book. I think it's a wonderful story.
Yeah, this is right up my alley, to be honest. This type of book, I love those. I mean, this is just reminiscing. Like, this is him reminiscing. He's kind of remembering moments with his mother, and it's almost like, by having the paintings there, it's almost like having a photo album. It's like, oh, and this is when we talked about, and this reminds me of this and that. Like, it sounds like a really good, narrative memory of his relationship. And I love these autobiographical works. I love these relationship books that they really are just sort of talking about a very specific, relationship, a very specific moment or series of moments in time. They don't necessarily have to go anywhere. They're eliciting an emotion. They're, bringing the
It's a
author's bringing
connection.
you along.
It's a story about a connection. It's a description of a connection, not a narrative, right? So,
exactly. And it's fun, and I love the unique format where he has the pictures or the paintings his mother did alongside or sometimes integrated into his own cartoon strip, like his own drawing style. So that's cool. I like this. I'll definitely be checking this out, trying to find it somewhere. Hopefully
ordered.
Ordered. Awesome. It'll be. We'll be getting it too.
I don't know if this was an element, but you touched on the thing about the museum painting and the questions hanging over that. And I do think that when you have somebody who is a creative in your life and they leave, you kind of turn to what they created. And in some ways that tells their story just as much as your experiences with them.
Yep.
And that element I'm looking forward to experiencing. So
well, and
sounds like you had a good one there, Caleb.
Oh, I do, and I'm going to be reading a lot more of Avery Press too, because there's several Avery Press publications on the comic app that I read, which I should probably know the name of.
Is it Untold or whatever that's called, or?
So this one, the symbol is everywhere. If they would only tell me what the actual app is called, that would be wonderful. Global Comics is the app. It's like $7 a month. There's a lot of stuff on here though, but collective continuity. We were just talking about how Greg Pak has written all of these stories, these works of art that he's done over the years, where he's talking about this, and it goes everywhere from what is morality. You can look back at World War Hulk or Planet Hulk, where the Illuminati decides, hey, the Hulk does a lot of damage to Earth. The best thing is to launch him into space. That's a moral decision, right? And then you look at how that goes with his work in DC with Superman, his work with the Hulk, his work with Met Cadet U, all of his stuff. Whereas really he's building this body of work. And one of my favorite things in the world is to talk to people like Zach Crucy about people like Steve Ditko and analyze these large bodies of work, because to Bill's point, they do tell a story. And not only do they tell a story to people that they know, but to strangers like me who are able to go back and that's how you learn to know somebody, through the legacy of their life and the art that they've left behind. And I think that's important. And I think it's interesting because art being subjective, you can, two people can learn to know somebody in two different ways by looking at the same things, which is kind of a fascinating and uniquely human experience. And it's a weird exercise in empathy too, the sin of empathy, if you will.
Thanks for letting me know about Avery Hill Publishing, actually, because they do have some books by authors that I know. Luke Healy has Permanent Press that's distributed by them. Tim Bird has a couple other books that they also distribute. There's a lot of really great stuff. I'm just looking through their catalog here. So yeah, awesome, good find.
Cool.
Ha! I win.
You win. We're done then. You won the episode today.
Okay, Steve, you got another book to talk about?
I do. And this is one that, I mean, literally anybody who talks about this book series could spend hours talking about the characters, who the characters are, what happened to the characters from issue to issue. It is complex and just... I don't want to say convoluted, because that makes it sound like there isn't a plan. There is a plan. There always has been a plan with this book series. But there are just so many different characters. There's so many interactions and relationships and fights and really cool things. And that is Michel Fife's COPRA series. And he has just released the first issue of his latest, The End of COPRA, or in this case, The Death of COPRA, through Image Comics. So he's returning to Image Comics for the last the last story arc of his long-running COPRA series. So COPRA started that self-published, written, drawn, colored, everything by him back in 2012. And since then, since publishing that first issue with, I think it was 400 copies, he talks about it on his blog. He had been distributing it through Bergen Books. He'd been distributing it on Etsy, through his own store on Etsy, for years. In 2019, he actually had a contract through Image Publishing, and Image Comics actually published several issues of COPRA, continuing off of his self-published numbering. And also, they are currently providing all of the reprints and collected editions, so you can get those through Image to read all the COPRA stuff that came before, to try and figure out who these people are, what happened, all that stuff. Some amazing battles, some amazing, just complex characters and relationships, all of it. There's so much. There's too much. I can't talk about it. So let's just talk about Death of COPRA, that picks up right after the end of the Ochizan saga, which was the last big story arc that he had. And interestingly enough, he starts it with two characters, not necessarily minor characters, but characters that we haven't seen in a long time, and just tells a story in panels. And basically, you have the assassin, super criminal Dai, who's been captured by Evie, and basically they're just they're stuck on this world. Neither of them are from our reality. Evie's the last of she's a super cop from her reality. It's been destroyed by the Ochizan. And Dai has kind of come along for the ride. Dai is a shapeshifter, and the last person that she shapeshifted was Evie's mother. And in doing so, she absorbs the memories, the personality, not just the appearance of that person, leaving the person to be dead. And she had been basically hiding out as Evie's mother for quite some time before she was discovered. So now the two of them are alone. They're strangers in this strange world. And Michel Fiffe starts out this book by giving you their story and giving you this little slice of life, with a very surprising ending in those 5 pages, and brings us up to speed to where they are, where the COPRA team is, where their sort of counterparts, not necessarily villains, but definitely rivals, the Detroit team, in the aftermath of Ochizan Saga. And this is kind of like the final, it's the postscript on that big, massive battle. And the characters are kind of in a relatively new position. They're kind of powering down. They're relaxing, blowing off steam. And he changes gears and gives you sort of a few examples of where they are after all of this, after everybody's kind of post-mortem on this, this massive battle that's left several characters dead, that's left several characters changing sides or, without a side left, and really starts setting up what's next. And for those of us who've been following it for a long time, and I haven't been, I only jumped on the train back in 2019 myself, what's next for COPRA and what's going to finish COPRA. And, if you're not used to, or if you're not aware of Michel Fiffe's art, again, he does everything his own style, and he has some really beautiful ways of presenting his characters. There's a very European feel to it. It feels like, old, kind of like old Mobius almost in some way, in some respects, and just other sort of French or Belgian comics in some ways. But it's beautiful, it's unique, and it's an interesting way of presenting a lot of these superheroes. Now, these superheroes, of course, follow a lot of archetypes. On the screen, you've got, if you're watching, you have Evie in her outfit, but she is looking at Rax, a character who's kind of modeled after the Changing Man. from DC. He wears this super suit that kind of changes his appearance and gives him superpowers and all of that stuff. But and even has very similar style, sort of in the in that style of the Changing Man. But this book ultimately is about personal relationships. Yes, there's fights and battles and really cool, like punches and smashes and all sorts of things that happen. But a lot of it is done in dialogue between 2 or 3 people who are just kind of expressing who they are. So you have the COPRA team, you've got the Detroit rivals, you've got all the backup. There's an Amanda Waller type character, Sophia, who's not necessarily as evil, but she's kind of morally gray anyway. But there's always twists. And of course, with the Death of COPRA #1, you've got a twist in the first 5 pages. You've got a twist right in the last page. And we're going to be seeing characters die. We're going to be seeing characters completely taken off the board before everything is said and done. And, Michel Fiffe, he's been building to this over the past 13 years. And he's finally ready to finish it, and he's going to go out with a bang. So if you've been sleeping on COPRA, I mean, I don't blame you. At times it's been difficult to get. The last, I think, 5 to 10 issues I've been getting directly from his Etsy store. After he stopped publishing with Image in 2020, 2021, everything's been self-published since then. And of course, obviously before 2019, it was all self-published. You can get the collected compendiums and editions. So I absolutely, there's volume 1. I absolutely do recommend checking out, starting at the beginning, and stick with it, because you'll love these characters. You'll love what he does with this. And I'm really excited to see it end. It is unfortunate that it is going to end, but man, it'll be fun.
So it's for me, it's more. So yes, for me, it's more like having read a lot of COPRA. It's a bizarre world. I love what Fiffe does. The best way I can explain it, it is the more cartoonist version of Black Hammer, right? Like,
yes,
it's a very
I've never thought of Black Hammer before, because I mean the most obvious analog is Suicide Squad.
Yeah, sure. Suicide Squad is kind of the direct.
But I always described it as Suicide Squad on mescaline.
Fair.
I think that's pretty fair.
Yes.
I never thought of Black Hammer, and I totally see it, especially how the series has progressed.
Yeah.
Because
I think
Suicide Squad on mescaline, that's just a starting point. It went off in so many different directions. But Steve, I think you hit on one thing. It's a very difficult series to stay with.
Yeah.
I mean, there'll be passages and pages where there's almost no dialogue. And then you get loaded with the dialogue that barely fits on the page. It's a task sometimes to keep up with it. I was very early adopter. I actually got copies from Bergen Street Comics because I was on an engagement in Brooklyn. And, I really enjoyed it, but it is a very difficult series to maintain. It's a task, but the rewards are many. I mean, I'm happy with Ram V, but oh my God, just seeing what he did with the Ochazon in terms of new gods. Oh my God, he'd be wonderful at that. And I think that's a rare series where there's enough stuff to bite into for a very traditional comic book fan. They just have to be prepared for shit to get wild, and don't get attached to people.
No,
don't get attached to any character.
Like people die so messily.
Don't get attached,
and that's it. Like, I mean, you'll be following a character. There'll be a character that was there for for years. I mean, years in real time. And then they're wiped out in a messy, disgusting way, and you're like, "Oh my God!" Or a character will have some kind of huge trauma that's completely, permanently changes who the character is.
Yeah, and I think he's pulling from the DNA of artists and writers like Matt Kent with stuff like that. because he's got this kind of like it's complex, but he's not pretentious about it. He's like, no, in the world that this is, these people would die. They would get it. Like, we're not going to hold them around for the sake of nostalgia. And I've listened to him do some interviews.
Intestines are falling out. They will die.
Yeah, like it's like, listen to some of his interviews, and he like that really contextualizes a lot of what he's doing in this world. I think if you hear how he talks about it. Because I mean, and Bill, the reason I brought up Black Hammer was not necessarily for a one-to-one comparison, but for what Black Hammer is as far as a critique of the Justice League, of superhero comics. I think this is doing a similar thing, but it's more of the like I said, more of a cartoonist version of that. Whereas Black Hammer is just something different. But yeah, I think the DNA is there.
And we mentioned the word world in describing this, and he's amazing at world building. Amazing at it. Yeah. I need to return to this at some point because it's been a while.
Yeah,
because
and I
like I said, it's not for the faint of heart.
And also like because there are gaps, because you have those gaps in publishing, and
when he was on All New Ultimates, you had no Copra at all. Nothing.
He was busy.
That was
he does everything himself. It's all But yeah, I mean, if you can, the best way to do it is just grab the collected editions and start at the beginning, because if you jump in the middle like I did, you're going to be very confused to start.
And for as back issue collectors, that's the only way you're going to be able to afford getting a lot of these stories.
If you were one of those lucky people who got on very early, some of those early single issues are, I mean, people, and he actually mentions it. This is one of the things. It's like, can I buy these? It's like, yeah, they're going to be very expensive, but the thing is, people who bought them hang on to them. People who bought them keep them. They're not, selling them to the speculator market constantly. They're holding on to them because they like it. They want to keep it. It's theirs. So, but anyway, so Death of COPRA, be prepared for a wild ride towards the end. Can't wait to see.
Yeah. And I do like that it's back at Image, because it's been off the radar,
It's easier to get.
It's either at your conventions. Nobody stocks it, so.
And I was getting it through Etsy, and
maybe like Forbidden Planet and places like that. But that's
I have to wait for the email from Michelle to say, oh yeah, we got the next issue. Just hurry up and order, because there's not that many.
Okay, I'm gonna wrap this show up with about the most conventional comic you can think of right now, but some backstory. In the 70s, old fella like me, some of the comics I enjoyed in tabloid form, and these are just some that I have around here. Limited collector's edition was the series. So this is a Superboy and the Legion reprint, more Secret Origins of Supervillains, and it reprinted the stories, but again, you have much bigger pages, being tabloid size, and you'd always get stuff in the middle of the action here, like these nice little wanted posters for the villains there, and the back you usually get like a tabletop diorama, and that's why you'll see a lot of copies just don't have the back page, because people would make these because it was fun. I certainly did. That also extended to the first facsimiles that we ever really had, apart from EC Comics, and that was the famous first editions. And this is my famous first edition of Detective Comics. It's actually a replacement. The one I have, it's in really bad shape from being a kid. But staying on that note of facsimile, DC has put out some of the facsimiles of these tabloid issues. They had a Batman, they had a Superman versus the Flash, but they did something new with this one. So they put out for the first time the Untold Legend of the Batman tabloid. This initially was a 3-issue miniseries. Just when miniseries started, this was DC's second miniseries after World of Krypton. And it basically says what it says there. It doesn't bury the lead. This talks about the untold legend of the Batman. It goes through the Earth One Batman's history. So, Steve, if you can just go through some of the pictures, and I'll try to describe this as best for audio. It basically starts with Batman lifting a tattered and wrecked version of a bat costume, which was the costume that was worn by his father. Yes, his father was Batman in a sense that he went to a costume party and basically, beat up some crooks while in this Batman episode. So Bruce was not necessarily the first Batman. It was his dad for one night. So this has been a treasured possession of Bruce. And as you can see there, and as I'll describe for people, it's in tatters. So this is the mystery. Who did this? Who did this? And as we go through the 3 issues, it unfolds. We see Batman becoming Batman in this particular page. One page and says, hey, he's, swearing that he's going to fight criminals at his parents' graves. The bat flies in, boom, he's the Batman. That's basically. Now, if you see the art here, if you can go back one page, it's a little more clearer. This is John Byrne with Jim Aparo inks. And so it's a weird looking hybrid of the two. This is John Byrne's first DC art of any type. All of his art prior to this had been at Charlton or Marvel. I believe the story was that most people at Marvel thought that John Byrne was exclusive. He actually wasn't, which wasn't uncommon at the time for artists that were overseas. In a sense, he was, because he was Canadian. And the word was he uses as a bargaining chip to get a much bigger page rate at Marvel. That he could go to DC on a marquee property like Batman, and it would sell, and it did sell, and I believe he succeeded on getting a much bigger page rate. This was from 1980. So as you go through the pages here and we tell the story, we basically unload through all of Batman's career, the villains, the relationship with Alfred, the origin of Robin. Then we get to his relationship in the 3rd issue with Commissioner Gordon. At the end of the 2nd issue, someone blows up the Batmobile. And it's, no surprise that it's the same individual that wrecked the original Batman costume. And being the great detective that he is, he's trying to find out who it is. And it's actually Robin who figures it out. It's actually Dick Grayson who figures it out. A little bit of a twist, kind of corny, but in terms of an encapsulation and telling people who may not have been familiar with Batman's history, you got it in 3 issues, at least up until that point in history. So again, it was a standard sized 3-issue miniseries. They did republish it in the tabloid format. You also have like some old ads. This one for Superman versus Muhammad Ali. Nice. So it's really cool, the packaging here. The one thing that I do hope that they do though with these is there was some material that was published in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s that was intended for the tabloid that never did happen that way. Specifically, Action Comics 500 was initially basically a Superman's life story, but they ended up publishing that as an annual because the Superman 78 film was delayed. And then there also is a Justice League story, which was told over 3 issues of Justice League of America, which initially was intended for the tabloid format in terms of news stories. So I do hope DC gets to that. But if they do go through some of those other early miniseries that are all like 3 to 4 issues, I'd love to see World of Krypton and Secrets of the Legion of Superheroes in this format. I'd really love to see that because they are difficult. They're difficult to find a home for them, Yeah. No, seriously, because they're all like 3 to 4 issues, and unless they're combining with another miniseries, right, it's tough. And the early ones they're kind of ideal for republication in this format. I hope they do that.
Right. Cool. Yeah, I saw that. at my comic shop, and I was like, what is this thing? It's huge. Why? What facsimile is this? But yeah, I mean that, it's a pretty cool homage to to the tabloid era, I guess, the tabloid size era.
Because when this came out, the tabloid era was dying. There were a few books that were still coming out. The Marvel DC crossovers were coming out. Mm-hmm. There's a Fortress of Solitude, the tie-ins with the Superman films, but it was kind of dead at that point. And even on Marvel, like most of them were Hulk tabloids because he still had the presence on TV with the series. Yeah. So it's nice that and not crazy expensive. This was $12.99. There's another version. I think the version that you showed, Steve, has a $19.99 price tag, but that's like the embossed version.
Oh yeah.
Maybe very pretty. Which may be the one that you encountered there. But yes. I was kind of ambivalent with these because I have them. I still have the majority of mine as a kid, or got replacement copies along the way. But something like this, I'm a sucker for it. So,
well, James just mentioned he just ran to my comic shop website, and the Batman tabloid is already out of stock. Oh, too bad.
Sorry, James.
Yeah. You're gonna have to do it the old-fashioned way and just sort of like dig through stores.
But I will say though that the Batman with the Neil Adams art, which told the first Ra's al Ghul storyline, that tabloid, I believe that went to a second printing or is going to a second printing. So maybe that'll happen with this. But keep looking for James, and we'll look for you too. We're good at that. Okay, looking at the clock, I guess we got to start wrapping this episode up. And when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears Up, we have two segments. One where we show off our geekettes, our acquisitions over the last 2 weeks that may be geeky somehow in format. Steve, I'll start with you because we always see what one of yours is back there.
So I do have there it is on the side. I do have this wonderful poster, but it is hard to see from this angle. So I'm going to show you what that image is. It is Fantastic Four number 28 that came out towards the end of last year. I just thought it was absolutely beautiful, and getting the poster of it was wonderful. It's just a gorgeous image. A variant cover for Fantastic Four number 28. So. Yeah,
in honor of the trailer that just dropped.
Yeah, exactly.
We could have talked about it in news. We should have. Yeah,
we could have, but we didn't. But you know what? It was the teaser. It's not even the official trailer. It's a teaser trailer. And the day before, there was a teaser for the teaser. So, you know what? Let's just wait until the real trailer comes.
It looks fantastic. The trailer looks fantastic. I'm very excited with what I saw.
Yeah,
it does look quite fantastic for a Fantastic Four movie.
And I think between the Superman trailer and the Fantastic Four trailer, I think we're going to have a good summer.
Oh, yeah.
God, yeah. And Thunderbolts to start it off in May. I think that's going to be fun, too. I'm getting more excited for the humor that's being presented on it. Hopefully the movie actually lives up to, the funny bits that we've seen.
Oh, and speaking of movies, we've got one coming up next week.
Yeah. And our next show will likely be dedicated to it.
That is our Valentine's Day date night. We are going to the theater to watch that movie.
Yeah, Captain America at Brave New World, I believe, is the subtitle for that.
I call it the Red Hulk movie.
Yes, it is the Red Hulk movie. Han Solo is the Red Hulk.
So my geek get.
Okay,
I don't have a lot. Actually, I got a book in that I had backed on Kickstarter. Very happy to get this in my hands. This is Water Racers by Mike Schwartz. Now, I am lucky in the fact that I get to claim Mike as a friend. We know him through the EOC community. This is a book that he drew, but he wrote the book with his kid, and which I think is really cool. So he did this on Kickstarter, so I backed it. Sends out this really nice little letter with each copy, talks about it and stuff. just a really fun. I haven't read it yet, but really fun background to the story. Mike's a great guy, so I'm super excited about it. I love the cartooning style that he does here. Just it's going to be fun. So I don't know how to tell you how to get this if you want it, but Water Racers. If you didn't
go back in time and kickstart it. There you go.
Yeah.
You have to know though, there's a lot of Kickstarters that still have options to buy.
Sure. I'm not sure if this was. I don't know if it does or not. I was like,
but, yeah. Just check out the Kickstarter because there may be some post campaign information. So, I almost was a Steve. I thought I had nothing to offer until I remembered that I did make a quick trip to one of my favorite record stores, Randy Now's Man Cave, and if you've been following my own accounts on Facebook and Instagram, you know that I post every day. I post a single from my collection. And if you've been following those posts, you know that I have a shit ton of records that came out from Apple Records, the Beatles label from 1968 to 1975. Again, those are singles, but I have big holes in my album collection when it comes to Apple Records. So I'm trying to gradually fill those in, and I did that. So I did get the Elephant's Memory album, which was produced by John and Yoko. Elephant's Memory were a New York-based band who were basically aligned, even more than John was, with a lot of left-wing and yippie causes during that time period. So this was their album. They had albums before this, but this was their album that was on Apple. And then I also got the Brother album by Lon and Derek Van Eaton, brothers. I'm sorry, people who are listening to the audio version. You're missing a visual here.
Yeah.
It's certainly a visual, but I don't know what I'm looking at, but it's a visual.
These were brothers who are from not too far from me, Trenton, New Jersey. Grew up there and garnered the attention of George Harrison, and they were signed to Apple. And unfortunately, they were signed at a time when Apple was kind of falling apart. And if you know Beatles lore, this was produced by Klaus Vorum, who was a figure in the Beatles' life since the Hamburg, Germany days. So, 2 albums that I've never owned in any format before, and now have them as part of my Apple Records album collection. So those are my geek kids.
Cool.
Okay.
That's
so
awesome.
We're going to wrap this show up. And when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears podcast up, we do so with our last segment, which we call the Woofs of the Week. In the bear community, if you find a fellow attractive, you woof at him. And we do something very similar to that. We woof at something which might be comic book related, but it also may be a TV program or a film or a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start as I always do with Steve. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
My woof of the week is the movie Companion. And oh my God, we saw this the other day. It is I guess you could kind of broadly say it's a horror movie, but more it's I'd say black comedy, sci-fi-ish flick. It's basically, and I'm not spoiling anything because it has been spoiled through the trailers and obviously the poster. It is about a woman who is actually an AI robot companion for the main character. Well, not even the main character, but for a man played by Jack Quaid. And they're invited to a remote lake house with several friends to spend a nice weekend alone. And it quickly goes off the rails. I love this movie. Loved it. It was hilarious in all the right parts. You are rooting for this main character, Iris, who is played by Sophie Thatcher. You may recognize from Yellow Jackets and a couple other movies and TV shows. But she is brilliant. She's fun to watch on screen. Great cast of other actors as well. Harvey Guillen from What We Do in the Shadows. It's just a lot of fun. Lucas Gage is in it as well. I love this movie. There's some blood and gore, but very tasteful and minimized. Really, it's just the wicked circumstance itself. But I highly recommend it. It is out in theaters right now. Companion.
Nice. Over to Caleb. Caleb, what is your wolf of the week?
So my wolf of the week actually goes out to a song. I was listening to some new stuff the other day, kind of going through some new releases, and there is both a new song and a new band that I am not familiar with up until now. But the band is called Vienna Vienna. They are kind of an alt punk band. It's not actually clear to me. Some things say band, some things allude that it might be a one person act, or at least, there's a one figure who's a driving force there. But the song is called God Save the Queens. And it is kind of the perfect song for the moment. Bill, you and I have talked, and it's kind of the only, I don't even think you can call it a silver lining, but the only positive thing is that hopefully there's going to be some good, like, resistance music, some good punk rock, some good hip hop stuff that comes out in the next couple of years. And if this is any indication, it's gonna be. The whole song is essentially about the trying to think of how to put it. The singer is queer, and some guy's trying to evangelize with him. And he's just pushing back, like he's just pushing the boundaries. The guy's like, "Do you know Jesus?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, I think I had him last night." So that's basically the whole. And the lyrics are like, "God save the queens and everyone in between," and stuff. So it's a very queer punk. I really like it. I immediately needed to go find this album. Unfortunately, it seems like Vienna Vienna doesn't do albums. They're just a bunch of singles that have dropped. But I am intrigued and I want more of this. It's very, very fun and very just snarky. So I think if you listen to it, you'll enjoy it. I know I sent you gentlemen a Spotify link. I don't know if you got to listen to it or not, but can't wait to hear what you think when you do.
Yeah, I'll try to do an edit for the audio version instead of the battle song as the outro. I'll try to put that in there.
Okay, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
So people don't have to search for it if they're listening. I'll do that. My wolf of the week is also music related. When I was at the record store I just talked about in Randy Now's Man Cave, he does have whole sections dedicated to 8 tracks and cassettes and VHS tapes, so a lot of antiquated stuff. And one thing that I had to pick up was the video Shindig Presents Frat Party. Shindig was a show from that aired on ABC at prime time from late 1964 to very late 1965. So it was like a season and a half. It was available on TV, and it was a music-based show. Now, this particular picture, I'm a huge Sam Cooke fan.
Yeah,
absolutely huge. I basically have every recording, not every live recording, but every recording, apart from the gospel stuff. And even there, I think I have most of that stuff. I knew he was a multi-instrumentalist. I've never saw one picture of him playing guitar. And at the end of the first episode, he joins the Everly Brothers for a version of Little Richard's Lucille. And that's the first time in my 57 years that I have seen Sam Cooke playing a guitar. So mine was blown. So anyway, so linking the first episode to this, so you don't necessarily have to have antiquated media. You can go to YouTube and see all 85 episodes are uploaded. Varying quality, but they're all complete. The series is actually owned by Disney now as the successor in interest to ABC. I'm sure with music rights, it would be impossible to have an official release, but at least unofficially, everything's out there. And like I said, the first episode ended with a kind of jam. A lot of episodes are like that. They frame the beginning and the end episode where it's not just people playing their hits. They might be other people playing other hits. And you look at some of the regulars, the Righteous Brothers were regulars. Glenn Campbell was a regular. Terry Garr, who recently passed away, was one of the dancers. So you see all these nice little cameos in there. And apart from Bob Dylan and Elvis Presley, every major act from the 60s performed in the show. The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Beach Boys, the Supremes, they all appeared on this show, and sometimes various times. So if you go to YouTube, you can find all those episodes from Shindig, and there is a slight comic book connection to this. So as I said, this show aired on ABC in prime time. It started in late 1964, lasted a full first season, was renewed for a second season. For the second season, they moved it from an hour long once a week to twice a week at half an hour. When it was canceled, the show that took its place, Batman.
Huh.
So tiny little comic book connection there.
Interesting.
But, if you go to the YouTube page, you'll see that there's at least one playlist that has all the episodes of Shindig and NBC's version, which was called Hullabaloo, which is a much superior show, but that's not my wolf. This wolf is Shindig. So there you go.
Cool.
All right. Well, we're almost like right at 2 hours on the dot. This is awesome. This is exactly what we wanted to do time-wise. So again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on most social media as Comic Book Bears, apart from Facebook, where you can find us as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to write to us, you can do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. If you joined us through Facebook Live, thank you. If you were watching us later on YouTube, thank you. Please like and subscribe. And we'll be back again in a fortnight. And again, the next time we're together, we'll be talking about a particular movie that involves a Red Hulk and Steve Rogers' successor as Captain America. And it's called Captain America: Brave New World. We'll see that before the episode, and we'll also do our usual shtick of making some comic book recommendations involving some of those characters. So you have something to look forward to in 2 weeks. So until next time, I'm Billy Z.
I'm Steve Morey.
I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
If you're listening to the audio version, you're going to hear a wolf and an explosion. We'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.
Wolf!